What's up, Wizards? It's Dev, SBMTG. We like it of Magic, especially on days like this, because I get to take a little break from Standard and actually have some fun talking about Magic the Gathering for once. Can you imagine? Yeah, here's some Lord of the Rings spoilers. Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on these the last few days as they kind of trickle out on us. I like Lord of the Rings, and some of these cards look pretty hype, so I wanted to jump on here, do a video on the YouTube about some of these cards. That's why I'm here, but I'm not going to talk about all the cards that have come out in like the last week or so since the last time we did a video like this. If you haven't seen it, check it out, link in the description. But I am going to still talk about 30 cards that I think look pretty good today. So whole bunch of cards. We don't have a whole lot of time. Let's go ahead and do it. Strap in and buckle up. Buttered stuff. Let's look at a bunch of Lord of the Rings cards today. Now we'll start with some uncommons that caught my eye, and there's not a whole lot of these. I only want to look at like 8 uncommons today, and some of them look really, really good, and others are kind of cruising by on name recognition, like Elrond here. Let's check him out, but let's also throw in Theoden, King of Rohan, and Strider, Ranger of the North. Sure, let's look at all these cards together. Elrond is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 legendary elf noble. Whenever Elrond or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, the ring tempts you. Now, I'm not too impressed by this, but there's a bunch of cool angles with it. I like that it provides at least some value when it comes into play. A scry ain't nothing, right? And then like in your tokens deck or something, you're getting a bunch of scries every turn. It could amount to something. And like the ring tempts you. You can get tokens on your opponent's turn somehow with like instant speed stuff, and the ring tempts you on their turn. And like there's some stuff you could cook up with this, but I'm pretty sure it's probably not worth the taste at the end of the day. So I'll move on to Theoden. A lot of you got on to me for mispronouncing a couple of names in the last video. I am very sorry for that. I will probably continue to do so in this video. I really hope you can bear that. But Theoden is 3 mana. This is 1 a white and a red for a 2/3 legendary human noble. And whenever he or another human enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. So another uncommon 3 mana legend that does stuff when creatures enter the battlefield. But this, a little bit more impressive in a lot of ways, right? Because, like, first of all, this is good ETB value just in and of itself, giving like your 2-drop double strike. I'll probably go for that, but on the next turn you play a creature and then a creature, and it's not limited to once a turn, and you just start like bashing face. And this is like, I'm talking about beyond Commander at this point, right? I could actually see this in a format or two, but there's probably a bunch of 3-drops that do so much more than this in the important formats that you'd want to play it. So I'm not like super convinced by it, but double strike is a pretty nifty ability to just be throwing around like this, and it's not hard to trigger at all. So I think he's got something. But let's move on to Strider, Ranger of the North. This is 4 mana, 2 a red and a green for a 4/4 legendary human ranger with landfall. I always freak out over a landfall ability. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, that's how it works. Target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Then if that creature has power 4 or greater, it gains first strike until end of turn. So, okay, it's like capable of getting value for you the turn it enters the battlefield. That's like not nothing. That's okay. And some of the time, like the turn after you play it, it's going to be like a 5/5 first strike for 4 mana, which is a pretty decent rate. But all things considered, this looks more like a drafty, good, like legendary uncommon if you're going to play this set and limited or whatever, but it doesn't really look like an everlasting Commander staple. But it is a cool card. I'm a sucker for a landfall trigger. I kind of like it. If you can put multiple lands into play in a turn, you can kind of like use it to alpha strike. So I think it's cool, and there's like probably multiple 99s this could end up with. And just any landfall deck, it looks pretty decent, but I'm not sure it's completely worth the cost of putting it in your like optimized landfall deck in Commander, but it still looks like a really fun card. Oh, but let's take a look at 2 uncommon legends from the last few days that I absolutely adore. Here's Shadowfax, Lord of Horses. Let's go. Along with Yorith of the Healing House. But I do want to look at Shadowfax first. I was hoping, and I mean, they have to print a Shadowfax. I was hoping they would print one, but I also kind of knew they had to. So what does it do? Looking like Rapidash over here. Shadowfax, Lord of Horses, is 5 mana, 3 in Boros colors, red and white, for a 4/4 legendary horse. Horses you control have haste. Whenever Shadowfax, Lord of Horses attacks, you may put a creature card with lesser power from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. That is actually pretty sweet. If nothing else, this is a 4 mana 4/4 haste at uncommon in Boros. That's like kind of not terrible in and of itself, but it just doesn't get a green, get stuff like this, but not necessarily Boros, right? But in any case, aside from just that line of play, I love that if you play other horses, it's like a horse lord. We don't have enough of those, and it should be a horse lord. It's the Lord of Horses right there in the name. It is the horse. It doesn't have to benefit other horses, I guess, but I like that it does. We need more horse travel in our lives. So just a huge fan of pretty much everything about this thing. And obviously there's also the busted attacks trigger that I haven't even mentioned yet. And it's the best part of the card. The fact that this has haste makes this 4 mana investment a lot easier to swallow because it basically produces 7 mana worth of value. And you can play the thing tapped and attacking. That's like kind of nuts considering how much damage that could potentially lead to, like, out of nowhere on turn 4. So I'm not going to go out on a limb and say this is like modern playable or anything, but it's really impressive to me in a lot of ways. I think it could show up in a few commander decks, do some fun tricks or whatever. Cool card for Boros and all that. And just all together, I was going to like Shadowfax almost no matter what they did with it. So long as it's not like a vanilla creature or something, I'm probably going to like soapbox for it a little bit. And here I am. I find myself doing exactly that. Huge fan of this creature. But let's come down from Shadowfax for a second and look at something like, if it's possible, even more hype, the amount of infinite combos this card is about to enable, guys. This is Yorth of the House of Healing. 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 1/4 legendary human cleric. You can tap it to untap another target permanent, and you can also tap it to untap 2 other legendary creatures. By the way, I'm pretty sure this is a card that I am definitely mispronouncing. Maybe it's Ioreth. Yorith? I keep saying Yorith, which is like 99% definitely the wrong pronunciation here. But still, it doesn't really matter what you call her. The card is ridiculous. This is going to show up in a lot of commander decks as a combo enabler, right? Definitely. Obviously, I think this is going to be one of the funkier cards from the entire set, but also when it comes right down to it, one of the more busted cards from the whole set. But let's finish out the rest of the uncommons here with some not legendary creatures. Turns out there's just some solid spells in the set. Let's take a look at Lost to Legend, along with Ring Sight and Stern Scolding. Now, Lost to Legend is just 2 mana, 2 white mana for an instant. Put target non-land historic permanent into its owner's library 4th from the top. In case you need a refresher, artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. So basically any artifact, a planeswalker, any legendary creature, right? And any saga for what it's worth. All targetable by this card. That's actually a lot of things, especially in Commander. And Commander, this has the unique ability to put Commanders 5th from the top of your opponent's library, which we really don't have a lot of cards that do stuff like that. 5 cards from the top is a pretty big dig to find your Commander again. So that is very hot and I like it, but it also targets like all kinds of stuff. Just the ability to target artifacts alone makes this somewhat playable in Commander. Some of the time putting it 5 down is like the best thing you can do. Like it's next to exiling a thing. Sometimes this is easily the best thing you can do. And eventually it replaces one of their draw steps effectively, which can be super annoying. So this card just looks very good to me. But so does Ringsight, man. This could have pretty easily been a rare and I wouldn't have like been too mad about it. Ringsight is 3 mana, 1, a blue and a black for a sorcery. The ring tempts you. Search your library for a card that shares a color with a legendary creature you control, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Now, if you don't have your commander or some other legendary creature out, then this spell sucks. It basically it's 3 mana to have the ring tempt you, which is really not a great rate. Unless you really need the ring to tempt you at that moment. And I could see some strategery being involved there, but still, you really need a legendary creature out. But if you do have a legendary creature, it's basically just a tutor. It's just a 3 mana go get whatever card you want in your deck because, you know, if you have your commander out, then you have to go get something that aligns with the commander's color identity. Unless, I guess this doesn't let you go get artifacts, specifically colorless artifacts. So that is kind of a bummer, but for the most part, just a 3 mana tutor anything up you want so long as you have a commander out is probably worth taking a look at. Anyway, let's take a look at Stern Scolding up next, which is just a single blue mana for an instant. Counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less. That is a lot of different stuff and it can hit way back in Modern, Legacy. This thing is a pretty wild counterspell when you think about it. I'm not sure if like Spell Snare or something is technically a little bit better. I mean, this is just an essence scatter that doesn't hit as many targets, I think a lot of people are going to say, but the fact that it's 50% the cost of an essence scatter and is pretty good when you're on the draw against those 2-drops and stuff, I think that this is probably more than worth playing, especially in sideboards. Hey, I'm back because it's time to look at rares and mythics. Now, there are some kind of duds in the section today, but there's still a few cards in the rares and mythics that, even though I don't think they're like amazing, I still wanted to look at them because mostly they're amazing references or incredible flavor. And I think this set is just doing a knockout job with a lot of that. Like the last couple of cards that we looked at, man, just really good flavor in a lot of those, except for maybe Stern Scolding. I don't see how it's a spell. Like, I draw blue mana from this island to make you go give a stern talking to this young man, a stern scolding. Why does that cost magic power? I'm not sure that I'd buy it, but for the most part, the flavor has been like really, really on point in this set. And even with some of these crap rares from today, which I call them that, watch them be like the best rares from the set. We'll see. But even with some of these crap rares from today, I think that they're worth looking at, if for nothing else but flavor. With that in mind, let's take a look at Isildur's Fateful Strike. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 black for a legendary instant. That's one of those things you can only cast if you have a legendary creature or a planeswalker. Destroy target creature. Its controller has more than 4 cards in their hand. They exile cards from their hand equal to the difference. So that's pretty nuts in some ways, right? You know, it costs 4 mana, though, for an instant speed spell that you can't even cast if you don't have your commander or some other planeswalker, some other legendary thing out, right? So I've always kind of hated these legendary spells, and they've proven to not be that great over time since the last time we saw them. They're a cool idea and all that, and I especially love when they're used to depict like moments like this. I think that's really cool. Although, just like Stern Scolding, it's like a wizard drew 4 mana, 2 of it black, from different lands to cast this moment in Lord of the Rings. It kind of doesn't make sense if you think about it for too long, but still, I like the overall flavor of the spell. I like what they're doing with it and all that. And if you can cast this on an opponent with 7 cards in their hand, killing their best guy, and also like ripping 3 cards out of their hand, it seems great. It seems great, but I just don't know the world where, like, okay, I have a legendary creature, I can cast this. I have 4 open mana to cast this removal spell, right? And my opponent has 7 cards in their hand and a good target to use it on, and they let it resolve. Like, you jump through all those hoops and you actually make this like a worthwhile spell to cast, and good on you, but I'm not sure that I'm going to try all that. Anyway, let's move on though to There and Back Again. This is a saga. That's how you do story moments, is with sagas. I like it. Good idea. But anyway, this is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a saga. On chapter 1, up to 1 target creature can't block for as long as you control There and Back Again. The ring tempts you. For 5 mana. On chapter 2, search your library for a mountain card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle for 5 mana. On chapter 3, it finally redeems itself. Create Smaug, a legendary 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying haste, and when this creature dies, create 14 treasure tokens. So that's a whole lot of treasure tokens, man. I gotta say that much. Now, Smaug reference here, so I had to bring this card up one way or the other, because pretty sure that aside from this, we're not going to get a Smaug card. And I love Smaug, so that's kind of lame. Hopefully we get like another reference to him, because really cool character. I actually, just for dev lore, I read The Hobbit like 15 times. I've read the Lord of the Rings books 1 time a piece, and I haven't even finished the 3rd one. You guys are going to hate me for that. I have now officially seen all of the movies for Lord of the Rings, but they're just written in completely different styles, and I prefer The Hobbit. So I love Smaug. Love that he's on this card, but aside from that 3rd chapter, the card is like not very good, to be honest, especially for 5 whole mana. So I'm not super excited about the vessel that brings Smaug, but I do like the reference. Let's move on to Faramir, definitely the cooler of the 2 brothers. I know not everyone agrees. I just can't. I've never liked Boromir. But anyway, Faramir is the Prince of Ithilien, and he costs 4 mana, 2, a white and a blue for a 3/3 legendary human noble. At the beginning of your end step, choose an opponent. At the beginning of that player's next end step, you draw a card if they didn't attack you that turn. Otherwise, if they did attack you, create 3/1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. I think this is really, really cool, man. It's a hill giant, it's a 4 mana 3/3, so I'm not like super impressed, especially considering it doesn't have any keyword abilities. Real fail, son, Faramir, but anyway, I do think that it's cool nonetheless. It creates an interesting bind on opponents. If they do attack you, then suddenly you get 3 dudes, and if they attack you next turn, you can, gang tackle something, or at least like chump block, right? And if you chump block, then you're just going to get more tokens, so eventually they're just going to be like, okay, draw the card, man. Whatever. So I think it's like really cool in commander games where you can kind of work some politics with this. And again, that's really good flavor because he's good at the politics. So I think it's really, really neat. The way they're designing a lot of these cards, actually, I really want to give props to some of the flavor on like almost all these cards. And I just keep saying that in this video, but probably won't be the last time. So just really like the design on this. Both in terms of flavor and actual, functionality. I think that it does something really cool that even though it costs like a bunch of mana, and I'm probably not going to be doing it Commander anytime soon, I just respect the card's existence more than anything. I like the design a lot. But let's move on to the Doors of Durin here. This is 5 mana, 3, a red and a green for a legendary artifact. Whenever you attack, scry 2, and then you may reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, you madman. Until your next turn, it gains trample if you control a dwarf, and hexproof if you control an elf. So just a little bit of fun flavor thrown in there. But hexproof if you control an elf is actually like very sexy. You really get down to it. Trample if you control a dwarf is all right, but there's a ton of super playable elves, and if all you really have in your deck is like mana dorks at like the 1 and 2 drop slot that help you enable the hexproof, then like you're doing great, man. I mean, you get to scry too. It does something when it comes into play too. I mean, the turn it enters the battlefield at least, so that's a point in its favor. 5 mana is kind of a lot for this card. I'm not going to lie to you. And so it's going to be kind of hard to get more than 5 mana worth of value out of it, but not impossible. So I like that about it. If you can get like a 7 drop to turn the CTBs and it gives you a chance at it, it gives you like effectively 3 looks at getting a decently statted creature. So, and then it just does it again the next turn and the next turn. And like, it's got hexproof and so I don't know, guys. 5 mana is a ton, but like this is the kind of party I want to go to. But let's take a look at Orcish Bowmasters next. These little dudes really caught my eye. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 1/1 Orc Archer with Flash. When it ETBs and whenever an opponent draws a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, it deals 1 damage to any target and then you amass Orcs 1. So this reminds me a bit of like Fairy Miscreant, and Fairy Miscreant's a great card, but that card draws you cards, which is probably a little bit better, but all that's, and it has an evasive ability too. So there's that, but either way, this puts a bunch of potential power and toughness on the table over the course of the game. And it can shoot stuff down, it only does 1 damage to a target whenever that happens, but that can add up, whether it's to your opponent's face or at a planeswalker, maybe take down their Llanowar elves or other X1 or something. So this dude's great, and I love the fact that it has Flash. So I'm not sure that it's going to like take over Modern anytime soon, but I do think it's a really, really cool little card. So I like the guy. I wanted to bring him up. Not a legendary dude or amazing flavor, incredible story moment, but not every card is that. Some cards are just cards that kind of impress me with the value they can potentially provide. So just like that he makes dudes and does damage. Just let me be into cards sometimes. I think this guy's great. But up next, let's check out Radagast on a card, everybody. Radagast the Brown is 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for a 2/5 legendary avatar wizard. And whenever it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that creature's mana value. You may reveal a creature card from among them that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control. Put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So at the end of the day, kind of a 4 mana dude that draws you at least 1 card and can kind of draw you a bunch of cards as the game goes on. I'm not sure if this is like as good as Beast Whisperer, or if it's just better than Beast Whisperer. I'm pretty sure Beast Whisperer is the card I'd probably rather play, but this is Commander, and you can just play both cards. So I'm just going to do that. This a reason this card is mythic. You know, sometimes you look at a card and you know you're going to mispronounce the name, but you don't care because you have to talk about the card. It's a very good card, and that's the case with Glowing Dwarf Emissary, Dwarf Emissary. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary dwarf advisor. Whenever you cast a historic spell, create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn, the old killer. You can tap it and sacrifice the treasure to goad target creature. Even with the once a turn restriction, I still think this is like definitely worth bringing up. I mean, a 3 mana 3/3 is nothing to write home about anymore, but at least it's a sturdy enough body to like not be embarrassing. And if you get like 1 treasure token every turn off of this, and you can, by the way, flash in artifacts and stuff on your opponent's turn and get treasure tokens too. So that's probably worth at least bringing up. The card can actually produce a fair amount of mana over a couple of turns. So especially in a game of Commander where you're going to cast a thing on your turn, cast a thing on their turn, cast a thing on their turn, cast a thing on their turn. That's a lot of flash artifacts to be playing in your deck. So not sure that it's worth it, but you're ramping a lot and I'm proud of you. Let's check out Display of Power next. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for an instant that can't be copied. I wonder why. Copy any number of target instant and or sorcery spells. You may choose new targets for the copies. Really, really neat. So it's like a fork kind of that can't be reforked, but I like this, you know, the old trick where you like copy counter spells to use them as counter spells against the counter spells applies with this, but also just like any burn spell, it's just a neat little thing. And I guess even if all you really do with this is just go like lightning bolt on the stack, lightning bolt on the stack, shock on the stack, cast Display of Power, deal 16 to the face, that's pretty good, but you hope you killed them because you're out of cards in your hand at that point. But still, it's a neat card. I like neat cards, but let's move on to Arwyn, Mortal Queen. This is 3 mana, 1 a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary elf noble. Marwyn enters the Marwyn, that's a different creature entirely. That's an elf. Arwyn, Mortal Queen, enters the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. You can pay 1 and remove the indestructible counter from her to have another target creature gain indestructible until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter on that creature, and a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter on Arwyn. It's a good card, man. I mean, I'm not sure that it's great in like Modern or Legacy or anything, but Pioneer, Explorer, I could seriously see them wanting a card like this, man. It's effectively a 4 mana card if you play it right the way you should, because you want to have a mana up so you can use its ability. But just imagine this against like a burn deck, right? Because if you do play this for 4 mana, you have an open mana, you basically invalidate the lightning bolt and make your creatures bigger at the same time, you know, just counter a spell, put 2 +1/+1 counters on guys, and now they have lifelink for the rest of the game. Like, that's actually disgusting against a whole lot of decks, not just burns. Basically any aggro pile. This will help break symmetry and Wars of Attrition and stuff. So just a decent little thing as far as I'm concerned. When you think about what you're actually getting for this, it's kind of 4 mana for 4 power worth of stats, because she comes into play with 2 power. She's going to, you know, disperse 2 power a little bit later in the game. And again, also just counter removal spells or sweepers. I mean, she keeps 2 creatures out if your opponent casts a Wrath effect or something, and that's great too. So I'm not sure about the claim that it's not playable in Modern. I think it might actually be playable in Modern, but I could also be talking out of my booty hole, so I'm not too sure about all that. But I do think the card is really sweet. I like this thing. But let's move on, y'all, because have you guys seen Horn of Gondor yet? This is 3 mana for a legendary artifact. When it ETBs, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. You can also pay 3 and tap it to create X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of humans you control. This looks so good to me. In kind of like it makes my like old school Magic player from the late 90s senses like tingle, you know? Like, this seems like a card that would have been printed back then and been really good. You know, I'm not sure how good it is nowadays, and I would never play it in like actual constructed. At least I don't think so, but you know, it's really good snowball value. But is it that good? I think in a game of Commander, though, this is unbelievable. I mean, it didn't even have to give you the human when it ETB'd, and it would still be like kind of fine, even though it's a ridiculously big like mana investment. But you know, you get to a point in the game where like all you do is draw for turn, activate Horn of Gondor, get 30 guys, pass the turn, Comes back around to you, draw off a turn, play your land, activate Horn of Gondor, get 60 guys. Like, come on, man. that seems okay to me in terms of snowbally value, which is what you want in some commander decks at least. This thing provides an awful lot of it. So, you know, even if like this gives you a 1/1 token and you already have 2 humans out, next turn, activate it, get 3 guys. Like, you could probably do way worse than that. And you get to keep all the cards in your hand, you know. It's one way of looking at it. So I don't know. I just really like this thing starting, you know, in the late turns of most commander games. I think it could just be absolutely gross. And yeah, there's sometimes where it just sits there and doesn't do anything because you just get hit by a sweeper, but I still think that it's like more than worth putting this card in your deck. It's pretty dumb. Let's take a look at Phial of Galadriel next. This is 3 mana for a legendary artifact. If you would draw a card while you have no cards in your hand, draw 2 cards instead. Why don't you? If you would gain life while you have 5 or less life, you gain twice that much life instead. And you can also just tap this to add a mana of any color. That's a really good 3 mana rock, man. Like, there's a lot of decent ones, you know, Coalition Relic and stuff, Chromatic Lantern. There are no shortage of like decent, actually good 3 mana rocks that you might consider in your commander deck. But damn, this is a very good mana rock, dude. Like, poor Dark Steel Ingot. He's never going to see play again. Poor Commander Sphere. Do people play that card? When you have stuff like this, you know, when you have no cards in hand, draw 2 instead is a ridiculous upside for a card like this. That is so good. I'm not sure how much I love the life thing, but it's probably going to save your butt, like, you know, a few times in the course of a couple of games of Commander. So I like that too. But for the most part, I just love the, you know, a mana rock. You're going to play, you know, some decks want to play a mana rock. Why not? For 3 mana, you know, sure. But the added value of like, oh, once you're down to top decking, here's 2 cards a turn. God, it's ridiculous. Any deck can play it. That's so good, man. I like this. In case you can't tell, I'm being pretty obvious about it, but I like this. But don't look now, everybody. We are in the top 5 cards of the day. Let's start with Moria Marauder. This is 2 red for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior with double strike. Whenever a Goblin or Orc you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Just fantastic for Goblin decks, man. Just 2 mana for a 1/1 double strike, not the best thing in the world, but with all these Goblin Anthem effects and like Reckless Bushwhacker and stuff running around, double strike is a great ability for your 2-drop Goblin to have. And it's effectively just card advantage, more card advantage for the Goblins deck, man. And they don't care that it costs 2 red. And oh yeah, I guess this works with Orcs too, but this is a 2-drop for Goblins decks in Modern that they will almost certainly play. Now, fair warning and full disclosure, this next card we're going to look at is probably not literally one of the best cards of the day. I have to say that. That's why it's just barely out of the top 3, but I can't help it. It's my favorite card of the day. So I have to put Shelob, Child of Ungoliant, all the way up here, right? This is 6 mana, 4, a black and a green for an 8/8 legendary spider demon with Death Touch and Ward 2. Other spiders you control have Death Touch and Ward 2. Whenever another creature dealt damage this turn by a spider you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a food artifact with pay 2, tap, sacrifice the artifact, you gain 3 life, and it loses all other card types. First of all, Spider Commander, and just I love spider decks. I really, really like spider decks. But they're not actually very good. So like every time I see a new cool Spider Commander or card for the 99, I kind of like fangirl a little bit. That's what's happening here. But also flavor, man. I keep saying that in this video, but what amazing flavor on what a spider would and should do, you know, like up to now, the 30 years Magic has been in existence. I feel like Magic designers are like, what do spiders do? They have reach because they have webs. That's all they do. Okay, what are you doing? Like, come up with something. You know, so I really got to commend like whoever came up with this specific design, because this is what a spider would do, kind of, when you think about it. You know, like the thing is still technically alive, but now it's food and it can't attack and block and stuff because it's like spun up in a web. And I love it. I love every second of it, and it's cool too. You know, if you like grab like just off the top of my head, you kill like a Shieldred or something on the other side of the table. Then suddenly you've got that effect. Your opponent's going to like lose life whenever they draw. You're going to gain life whenever you draw. And there's a bunch of stuff you can ingest sort of like that have these incredible abilities where they don't even have to attack or block to affect the game state, you know? So I love this card. It might cost a little bit much, but once it's on the table, it's kind of hard to remove. It makes your other spiders hard to remove. Just a really, really cool thing. Also, just last thing on this card, because I want to talk about it for like 5 hours. I really like this card. Just top shelf reference. You know, them Bagginses are always having to deal with spiders, you know, like Bilbo has to kill one in The Hobbit. This is the one Sam kills, I believe, in Lord of the Rings, and would kill Frodo if Sam wasn't there. Of course, a lot of stuff would have killed Frodo if Sam wasn't there, so I guess it barely counts, but still, cool reference. I like it. But let's move into a card that I am somehow even more excited about. This is Lotho? I don't know. Corrupt Sheriff? Who knows? This is all I care about is what the card does. It's 2 mana, a white and a black for a 2/1 legendary halfling rogue. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. Oh my god, this is ridiculous card. Like, I don't understand, man. They allowed this to see print. It's only 2 mana, and you can get it going like early, man. You throw this down on turn 2 in Commander and say go, like dare them to go like Soul Ring into Thing, you know? It's just like, well, if you guys all do that, I guess I get 4 treasure tokens, whatever. You know? And then when it rolls back around to your turn, it also creates treasure when you cast more than 1 spell a turn. And since your opponents are giving you all that mana, it shouldn't be too hard to make that work. It's just a ridiculous amount of treasure production. It honestly looks like a bit slightly broken, enough to make me start stuttering. Because I'm pretty sure this card is busted all the way in half. I was going to say in half, multiple pieces. The card is just broken and scattered across New York City. That's how busted you are, bud. I should probably learn to pronounce your name correctly because I'm going to be saying it a lot. You guys know I love Orzhov. You guys know I love me some Orzhov. So I kind of a huge fan of this. But even if it was like a color combination I didn't play very often. Oh, it's Boros? Well, I guess I'm a Boros player now. You know, that's basically how it would be, because good gravy grief with macaroni wheels. I'm just going to start spouting gibberish because like the card is unfreaking believable, dude. Again, like I'm kind of surprised this card exists. But let's check out Flowering of the White Tree next. This is 2 white mana for a legendary enchantment. Legendary creatures you control get +2/+1 and have ward 1. Non-legendary creatures you control get +1/+1. Jeez, holy Toledo. That's a pretty good Magic card, man. I mean, like, it could have just been, you know, a replacement for an old Anthem effect that we had back in the day. It could have just been a 2 mana, all you guys get +1/+1, have a good time, you know? That would have been a good enough Magic card, but it is even better than that. It's even better. All you guys get +1/+1, unless they're special. Special men get +2/+1 and also are harder to target. That's just nuts, dude. That's so nuts. Like, imagine in modern, if you go like turn 2 Thalia into turn 3 1-drop this guy, like, come on, man. That's just a really, really good Anthem effect, and now all your stuff is never gonna get targeted again. So it's just woof. Like, I just think this card is like really good in a bunch of different formats. Yes, Commander, it's a great little Anthem effect for your boys, but in, you know, Historic Legends, right? That's a deck that exists. In Pioneer, in Explorer, these Legends decks exist, you know. So, and obviously Standard, but Standard doesn't get to be in the party this time, which is fine, probably. It's probably for the best, but still, basically any format has access to this card. I think the mono white weenie decks will probably want it, but if nothing else, the historic or the legendary decks want it too. So just a lot of decks this thing can go in, and my God, it's one of the best Anthem effects of all time when you really think about it, isn't it? Isn't it kind of actually, when you think about it, one of the best Anthem effects ever printed, ever? Marinate on that. I think it actually is. But last card of the day here, everybody. Let's take a look at Gollum Scheming Guy. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/1 legendary halfling horror. And whenever Gollum Scheming Guide attacks, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put them back in any order, then choose land or non-land. An opponent guesses whether the top card of your library is the chosen kind of card. Reveal the card. If they guessed right, remove Gollum from combat. Otherwise, you draw a card and Gollum can't be blocked this turn. I love that the whole guessing game thing. They found a way to like put that on a card. Not only put that on a card, but make it like kind of a fun little mini game to play. And it's a playable Magic card, right? Like, this looks somewhat constructed playable, you know, a 2 mana 2/1 that draws a card and goes unblocked. pretty decent. And again, in those early turns, they don't really know how to play the guessing game. Are you looking for, do you want it to be a third land, or do they want it to be a creature? How do I know? How do I know? So what they put on top. And if nothing else, you kind of get to scry with it, like every single turn at like little to no cost whatsoever. Because again, it's just going to get removed from combat if they guess right anyway, but you still get to rearrange those 2 cards. And that in and of itself is decent value. So Gollum, man, I think you're actually, if not the best card that we've seen in the last week or so, then you're definitely in like the top 5. But oh boy, I think we're actually done, guys. Audacity over here says I've been talking for 1 hour and 18 minutes. Who knows what that's going to look like once I actually get everything cobbled together in the editing booth. We'll see. But I have been speaking for what feels like forever. So I hope that was enough information for you. Again, we didn't cover all the cards that we've seen this week, but we're going to do at least one more of these videos before these spoilers are done. And then when all that's over, we'll probably do kind of a best of the rest where I talk about some cards that I haven't talked about so far to kind of finish out spoiler season. I know that I'm the standard guy and all that, and I don't usually talk about like Masters sets that come out and like modern only product or whatever, non-standard legal stuff. But I'm just really excited about the Lord of the Rings product. I want to talk about it with you guys. So just let me know what your favorite cards are from today are, even if I didn't talk about them. Especially if I missed something like ridiculous. Just let me know down there in the comments section. Of course, if there's any like nutso combos you can think of with any of these, let us all know down there, because the set looks fun, man. The set doesn't look like overtly powerful at this point, but kind of like that. It looks like a fun draft experience. Looks like a fun one for like casual players to open a few packs and be like, oh, I got a Sauron. Oh, I got a Gandalf. Let's make them fight or whatever. You know what I mean? But also for like seasoned Magic players to enjoy, whether it's through that limited experience or for picking up some cards for Commander and stuff. Altogether, this is the kind of Universes Beyond thing I can get behind, because we've been talking about how Lord of the Rings and Magic go together since like 1993 when Magic debuted. There would be probably no Magic without Lord of the Rings. So set makes perfect sense to me. It's not like they're doing Universes Beyond Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, although to be honest, might be okay with that. I'm getting used to it by now. But anyway, I like this set. I like the idea behind it, and I really like sort of the design that they're employing on a lot of these cards so far. But let me know how you feel. Don't worry, we're doing Couch Card of the Day for anybody who's been here before. I'm sure I've got a few people searching the internet like, no, I want to see about those Lord of the Rings previews. Who's this guy? Oh, he's handsome and fat. I'm sure I've got like 3 new people here, but in case you are new, we do Couch Card of the Day here, where I fish a card out from this mountain of cards on the couch. It's the whole reason I don't clean the couch, is because we do this part of the video. What did I get? You guys are going to want me to sleeve this card, but I'm probably not going to, because it's a proxy anyway. It's a Wooded Foothills. It's the green-red fetch land. That's a hell of a thing to pull off the couch, isn't it? But this is actually a proxy. This is a proxy that I got from wish.com. It is not a real card whatsoever. So that's probably why it's not sleeved and just sitting on the couch. It looks like a $50 card. It's $0 worth of value and 0 cents as well. So do whatever I want. But anyway, I think that's all we got for this one. Just check out the other Lord of the Rings preview videos. If you haven't done it, I'll leave them in the description, along with other stuff. If you want to see me play some Magic on Twitch and sometimes talk spoilers too, link in the description for that. And if you want to help out around here, it's patreon.com/SBMTG. Again, link in the description. It's the best way that you can make sure I can continue to do this on YouTube. I've been doing it for 8 years. Really like to keep doing it and like not live on the street. So if you want to help me out, I would really appreciate your support on Patreon. But aside from that, that's basically all I got. I'm done. It's your turn. Untap, draw. Let me know how you feel about all the stuff, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.